What's up guys? Another day, another project car. Today, very simple job. We're going to be installing a 3-inch lowering kit on this 52 Chevy. Pretty simple, just throwing springs and shocks in the front and blocks in the rear to lower it. So super simple, super easy. So I'll do a quick little walk around for you guys so you can see the before shots. I mean, you can see it's tucking the white wall a little bit. The front's definitely higher than the rear. Well, mainly probably because of the body line. So we'll get that down. Not a bad looking car. So got the boxes open, and this is pretty much all you need, minus the rear shocks. We're still waiting on those, but for now we're gonna go ahead and throw everything in, and when the shocks come in, I'll just slap them in real quick. Super easy, super simple. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than this, guys. Got lowering springs in the front, the blocks in the rear. Came with new U-bolts and hardware. This is the new bump stops for the front on the lower control arm, and the front shocks. And like I said, we're still missing the rear shocks, but we're still waiting on those. This leaf spring is already under the axle, so in this case you just add blocks. If not, then you get a flip kit which relocates the leaf spring from above the axle under the axle, and then you can add blocks or whatever and drop shackles. So like I said, this is pretty much kind of a universal method to lower your cars or trucks. Pretty much same principle all the way around. Well, I got the wheel off, and looks like he already upgraded to disc brakes, so that's pretty nice. As you can see here, here's the coil spring, and the shock is inside of there. So what you want to do is separate the upper or lower from the spindle. The upper is going to be a 1-inch, and the lower is going to be a 1 1/16, I believe. Yeah, 1 1/16. As far as the shock goes, yours might be a little different. These shocks have already been replaced, but the nuts for the shock is actually a 14 in this case. Yours is probably going to be like a 9/16 or something, but in this scenario, those are going to be a 14. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the shocks out right there first, and then from there I can set my jack underneath the lower control arm and break either the upper or lower control arm loose. The reason why I put the jack underneath there is because this is under pressure, and once you separate it, the spring is going to want to go somewhere, and pretty much the jack is what's going to stop it from just exploding in my face. So I put a jack underneath there, and that helps it from going all crazy. So after you get both of the upper and lower ones off, there's going to be a bracket down here that's going to hold it in place. And this one in this case is actually a 9/16. It's a little rounded out, but it is a 9/16, and that'll allow the strut to drop all the way down. So now that this bracket's out, you can see it just comes right on out like nothing. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the lower one off. It just seemed a little bit easier. So it was a 1 1/16 on this side and a 1 inch on the other side. After you get that off, you want to go ahead and remove your sway bar. Sometimes you can wiggle it out without removing this, but it makes life a lot easier just by removing the sway bar. It's just one bolt, so it doesn't take that long to take it off, but it will make your life a lot easier. So I recommend go ahead and just taking that off and getting it out of the way. So after you move your sway bar and got that bolt out for the lower control arm right there, you can let your jack down, slowly let it down. This will be under a little bit of pressure still, so kind of be careful. And I just kind of put my foot right there, and the spring is out. And here's the old spring compared to the new spring. As you can see, there's definitely a height difference. When you're putting the spring back in, if you look, there's one side that's kind of still offset. It's not completely flat up here, and then you have one side that's clearly flat. So the flat side is going to go up, and the coiled side is going to go down. And the reason for that is in the lower control arm, I don't know if you can see it, but it's slightly kind of tapered, if that's what you want to call it. So that way the spring will cup in there and stay in place, and on the top it's pretty flat up top. And once you get the spring in place, you just take your jack and jack up your lower control arm till it matches, and then you can put your bottom bolt in. However, before I put the spring in, I'm gonna go ahead and take this old bump stop out. I mean, it still looks in pretty good shape, but the new bump stop's definitely a lot lower. So that way he's not riding on the bump stop the whole time. This is a little bit shorter, and it's a 9/16 bolt at the bottom. Driver's side is done. Sway bar back in, shock is in, springs in, all bolted and tightened up. There's a lower control arm bolt, so I'm gonna slap this wheel back on, knock out the passenger side real quick, and then I'll take you guys along with me to do the back. So on the rear, from the trunk, you're gonna have a bolt there and a bolt there, and that's where the top of the strut is for the shock. On the bottom, you're gonna have a 3/4 nut holding the shock on right there, and these are gonna be 3/4 as well. These look like these have been replaced at one point, so your size might slightly be different. So the block will go in between the axle and the leaf spring. What that does is just raise the axle up and turn lower in the car. So if you look at the block, there's gonna be a pin here and a hole there. If you look on the leaf spring, there's gonna be a pin there and a hole there. So you're just gonna pretty much line up that hole with that pin, same thing on the axle, and then put your U-bolts through, tighten them up, and that's it. So we ran into a little bit of a problem. These are the bolts that were provided with the kit, and as you can see, they do not fit the bracket. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna use the ones already on it, since they do fit. However, they are not long enough. So I went to AutoZone and picked me up some U-bolts, and those fit, and as you can see, they're longer. These weren't long enough, these definitely weren't long enough, and they didn't even fit in there. I will say we're not sure if this is the factory rear end or not, so that could be why it doesn't fit. But anyways, I'm just glad I got it figured out, and let me slap this in here and get this thing outside, because I'm really excited to see what this thing looks like. So that wasn't too bad. You can see the block is right here, and it just pretty much moves the axle up higher and turn lower in the car or truck. So I got the car back on the ground. There were some clearance issues with the U-bolts that I had to grab, so I ended up having to trim them. And that lower bracket, I had to trim it as well because it was super close to the wheel, and I just didn't like it being that close. So I just trimmed it down a little bit, and now it clears. Well, here she is, guys, looking nice, looking real nice. Every single car, truck, or whatever, everything looks better lowered, and you cannot change my mind. So again, this is a 3-inch drop all the way around, springs and block in the rear. And that's a wrap on this video. Hope this helped somebody out. If not, it's cool to look at. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Stay tuned, because who knows what I'll end up building. I mean, stuff like this comes in all the time, and I love taking them on because, I mean, old cars are so tight. So anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.